In this snippet, we'll introduce you to radio buttons, another way of providing input. So here's a very basic radio button page. I have these buttons set up so that they report the change immediately when I click one. So I click that and you notice it changed the 2 right there. I click this, it changes 3. I click 2, it goes back to 2, 3 to 3, 1 to 1, and so on. These wait until this button here is clicked. So I can click this, nothing, you see nothing happens, that nothing happens, that nothing happens. Then I click this and now I get my output. Now if I click this, you notice this isn't changing down here. Nothing's changing, okay? Let's go to 3. Then I click the button and then it changes. These are the 2 basic ways that we use radio buttons. We either use radio buttons so that they change immediately, they cause something to happen immediately when we click them, or the change is delayed until we click a button like that. Here's what they look like. You'll notice that where my radio buttons are, I have an input element. Now you've been using input elements to get stuff in a field. The difference is you've been using type text. Now we're using type radio. So if you want a radio button, you use an input element and the type is radio. And most of the time when we use radio buttons, we'll give them an ID. We'll also give them a value. The value is where we put some sort of special value that helps us to do what it is we're trying to do. In this case, I want to output the number of the buttons, so I'm just using that as the value. Now what's really important here is this name. You'll notice that when I do this, the button moves, but it automatically, I click here and it automatically disappeared from up there. And even down here, where it waits to do an action until I click this kind of button, I click here and it immediately removes it from the other place. That happens automatically without my doing anything. The reason it does is because of the name. When you have an inputs of type radio, all of those that have the same name are considered to be bundled together. So if I change the click for one of these, like right now, you see the button here is 3. If I click button 1, because button 1 is part of the immediate set, it makes sure that it clears out the other 2. So it automatically sets the selected item and deselects automatically the other. And you notice here I used a different name, wait. Now if I had used the name immediate down here as well, then what would happen is that it would, all of these, if I clicked something up here, it would remove something from down here. The point of this is to show you how you can have different groups. We have one group here, and the way we make them in groups like that is to use the name. So we have immediate, the name immediate groups these up here, the name wait groups these down here. So that's how we get it so that it knows where to remove it. So right now it's on button 3, I click button 1 and it cleared it from button 3 and put it up there automatically, and that's because they're in the same group, that is they have the same name. Now here's I've talked about the ID, you know what IDs are. The value here is a special field that we can use to put data, and right now we're just using it for this number. Now let's see how the two of these differ. You notice that I have these here in a div like this, and the div is RBIMMED for immediate, and you notice up here I'm listening on the whole div, so we're really up here just doing the same thing that we did before. If I come up here, this is the immediate ones, I get the event parameter, and if it's not an input item I just return, otherwise I output this text, button EV target value. That value there connects to this value here, and so it's going to output whatever the information, the value here is for that value attribute. So that's what's happening up here, and that's really not much different from what we've done before. The only thing that's different here is that it clears the button that was there when it brings it to the new one. That's the only thing it does for us. Now this does something a little bit more. For this one, I can click all around and it's not going to tell me anything until I click this button. And so the way that this one works, and you notice here we have wait, rad, event listener, click, appns wait. Now appns wait or appns wait is not any of these buttons. You notice that all the IDs for these buttons are here. What that wait rad is this button, this non-radio button right here. So this is what I click to make something happen. So the question then is, and here of course is where the answer comes out in this wait report area, this div, that's where it writes it to. But the question is, how does it figure out which of these buttons is the one that was clicked, the one that was used? Well, as you can see, the event handler is pretty simple. First of all, the event handler is not using an event parameter here. We have something called data, and you notice we say data gets document.getElements, elements plural, by name, wait. Now look at that, name and wait. If we look at that, you can see that down here, the name attribute is wait. That's not a mistake. That's not just happenstance. What happens is that this here will, just like when we used tag name, it got all of the tags, all of the things that had that particular tag in a particular subpart. It didn't have to be document, it could be something else. Well, when we get elements by name, it must be document in front. It absolutely must be document in front. It can't be anything else. But what this will do is it'll go through the whole document, and anything that has the name wait gets gathered up into the collection. And we index this and we use length and everything else the same way we do with arrays and the same way we did with the collections of tags. So this is really nothing different. So what happens here in this particular case is that we have 3 items here, and so what it does is that up here data will have 3 cells. So data.length will be 3, and they'll be indexed 0, 1, and 2. You know, we start here and we go as long as I is less than data length. All right, this should look very familiar. We've done this before. And the way we find out which button has been checked is by looking for checked. So for a button, every button will have a property here called checked. And this property will be true if it is the button that was checked, and it'll be false otherwise. And so what this does here is it just keeps going through. So it says, okay, for data 1, are you checked? If the answer is no, then it just goes on out of this if statement back up to here. It says number 2. I mean, here's button 3, so it says item 0, no. Item 1, no. Item 2, yes, because this will be, remember, item 0, 1, and 2 in terms of indexes. And so it'll check and say, oh, okay, so item 3, you're checked. And then what it does is this writes out this stuff here, and then we break. Now what a break does is it just makes a loop stop immediately and completely. So if I found it on the very first one, let me go up here and click button. If I find that this one is checked, I don't need to check the other 2. I already know what it is. So I click and I get 1. And so what will happen is that I'll be 0. It says, are you checked? It looked and it saw that and it said, yes, I am checked. And it says, great. It comes down here. It does this right here, and this outputs this information right there. And then it breaks, which means the for loop stops and it leaves. It doesn't check that one or that one. This is just a way to make the code a little more efficient. So those are the basics, the very, very basics of radio buttons.